Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy. So, we have been discussing important topics for mains examination from Polity subject, and today we have some important topics, particularly with respect to the Election Commission of India. Because in every year in mains examination, you could actually see at least one question from the Election Commission of India or elections which are held in India, right? Because we believe in the principle of free and fair elections, and Election Commission of India plays an instrumental role in conducting elections in a free and fair manner. And apart from this, the simultaneous elections or one nation one election, this is also very often in news. So therefore, in this context, we'll try to understand some important provisions with respect to Election Commission of India. So what are the roles, responsibilities and functions of Election Commission of India when it comes to conducting free and fair elections? Now, what are the problems that Election Commission of India has been facing? And what should be the way forward? Now, what are the reforms that are required that could actually strengthen the Election Commission? And similarly, we will also understand the concept of one nation and one election in a much more detailed manner. So you can see here on this image that these are some important constitutional provisions that deals with Election Commission of India. So first, we'll understand what exactly is an Election Commission of India. Now understand one thing. So Indian Constitution has provided for some bodies or some institutions, so which are considered as bulwarks of the Constitution. So they protect the Constitution. They protect the constitutionalism in India. And Election Commission of India is one such institution that has been created by the Constitution of India, right? So the primary responsibility of Election Commission of India is conducting elections in a free and fair manner. So this is considered as the primary responsibility of the Election Commission of India. And in fact, this Election Commission of India is an independent body. It is a constitutional body. And in fact, Election Commission of India derives its powers from the Constitution itself. You can see the articles that are given in this image. So these are the articles that are specifically deals with the Election Commission of India. So that gives powers to the Election Commission of India. And in fact, Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, so it says that it actually entrusts the Election Commission of India with the superintendence, direction and control of elections to be vested in Election Commission. Now what are the Election Commission of India is entrusted with conducting elections to the office of President. So it is important for you to understand, and the office of Vice President. And similarly, it also conduct elections to Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha, general elections, state legislative assemblies, similarly state legislative councils. If any state have a state legislative councils, then also it conduct elections to all these different institutions and offices. And that power is given to the Election Commission of India by Article 324. Similarly, Article 325 of the Indian Constitution, it says that there should be no discrimination. There should be no discrimination when it comes to inclusion of anyone's name in the electoral rolls by the Election Commission of India. right? And in fact, Indian Constitution fundamental rights, particularly Article 15, also talks about prohibition of discrimination. And similarly, when it comes to conducting elections or ensuring free and fair elections, Article 325 also talks about no discrimination when it comes to participating in elections, when it comes to including any name in the electoral rolls. And this is what is called as universal adult franchise. In India, we have a universal adult franchise. That means everyone who is above 18 years of age are eligible to cast their vote. That is what is called as universal adult franchise. And Article 325 says that there shall be no discrimination on any individuals on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, etc. And similarly, Article 326 of the Indian Constitution. Now, what it talks about? So it talks about elections to the House of People, that means elections to Lok Sabha, and also elections to the state legislative assemblies would be conducted on the basis of what? On the basis of universal adult suffrage that we have just discussed. Everyone who is above 18 years of age would be allowed to cast their vote, and that is what Article 326 deals with. And in fact, Article 326 mentions the House of People and also state legislative assemblies. To these two houses, elections must be conducted based on universal adult franchise or adult suffrage. And similarly, Article 327 of the Indian Constitution, so it says that power of Parliament to make provisions with respect to elections to the legislatures. And Article 328, power of legislature of a state to make provisions with respect to elections to such a legislature. So these are some important provisions that the Election Commission of India deals with. Now we will understand the strength of Election Commission of India, tenure of Election Commission of India, and also the powers of the Election Commission of India. Now when we talk about the strength of Election Commission of India, now we all knew that Election Commission of India would consist of a chief election commissioner plus two other commissioners, right? So this is the strength of the Election Commission of India. But now one thing that you should understand here, the strength of the Election Commission of India is decided by whom? So it is being decided by the President of India. So President of India from time to time determines the strength of the Election Commission of India. And in fact, here President is having the authority, right? So who appoints the chief election commissioner? So President is having the authority to appoint the chief election commissioner as well as the other commissioners, right? So we have just discussed that Election Commission of India is consisting of one chief election commissioner plus two other commissioners, right? So therefore the strength of the Election Commission of India would be decided by the President, and chief election commissioner and other election commissioners are appointed by the President himself. And what is the tenure of the chief election commissioner and other election commissioners? So it is also important to understand the tenure as well. And in fact, the chief election commissioner would have the tenure of 6 years. He is having a tenure of 6 years or until the age of 65 years, whichever comes earlier. So this is the tenure of the chief election commissioner. But on the other hand, the tenure of the election commissioners are being decided by the President of India. And now one thing that you should understand here, who appoints The election commissioners, so the election commissioners are appointed by the president, but here the tenure of the election commissioners would be decided or determined by the president. So you have to understand this difference here. Now, when it comes to the powers of the Election Commission of India or the Chief Election Commissioner, so the Chief Election Commissioner and other two election commissioners, so they actually have equal powers. So they have equal powers and they receive equal salary, and they are also entitled to equal allowances and other prerequisites, which is other perks which is equal to the judge of the Supreme Court, right? So they receive all the salaries, allowances and all other benefits equal to the judge of the Supreme Court, right? So this indicates that, you know, the Election Commission of India, being an independent constitutional body, is equivalent. It has been given a position which is equivalent to the Supreme Court of India, because remember that this is one of the bulwarks of the Indian Constitution. It is protector of constitutionalism, and because of that reason it is very important to ensure security of tenure for the chief election commissioners as well as the election commissioners. However, now we'll understand Election Commission of India is having certain powers and it also performs certain functions as well. So what are the powers it is having and what are the functions it actually perform? So it is very important for us to understand this. Now firstly, the administrative powers that the Election Commission of India would have. So when we talk about the administrative powers, now delimitation of the constituencies would be done by the Election Commission of India. Now see one thing that you should understand here: delimitation of constituencies is not done by the Election Commission of India, it is done by the Delimitation Commission, right? And in fact, in this Delimitation Commission, either Chief Election Commissioner or election commissioners would also be part of it, right? I hope it is clear for you. And in fact, determine the territorial constituencies all across the country based on the Delimitation Act. So this Delimitation Act must be passed by the Parliament after every census. So after every census, this Delimitation Act must be passed by the Parliament. And the other important function that it performs is that it actually prepares, updates and revises the electoral rolls, right? So electoral rolls are very important, and based on electoral rolls, voters usually cast their votes. So therefore it periodically prepare, revise, update the electoral rolls of all eligible voters, and this is also another very important function performed by the Election Commission of India. And similarly, it also conduct elections. Now we have already discussed to which offices the Election Commission of India conduct elections, and the office of President, the office of Vice President, and Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, state legislative assemblies and state legislative council. So these are the offices and the institutions to which the Election Commission of India conduct elections regularly. And in fact, Election Commission of India notify the dates, notify the schedules for the elections, and it also regularly scrutinize nomination papers of candidates who are contesting elections. And in fact, it is the responsibility of the Election Commission of India to ensure that elections are conducted in a free and fair manner. So similarly, registration of the political parties, right? So India is a multi-party. India is having a multi-party system. So India is a democracy which is having a multi-party system. But on the other hand, in US, so we can see a two-party system. And a communist country like China, we can see a single-party system. But in India, we have a multi-party system. So here in India, the responsibility is given to the Election Commission of India to register the political parties and also grant them the national and state party status, and also allowed them these symbols as well, right? So election symbols would be allotted to them. It also registers the political parties. It also grant them the national party status or state party status as well. So this is another specialized function particularly performed by the Election Commission of India. And we all knew that whenever Election Commission of India announces a schedule for the election, immediately the code of conduct would comes into force, right? So here the responsibility to implement the code of conduct in a fair manner is entrusted with the Election Commission of India. And this code of conduct must be observed by the political parties who are contesting elections, and also the candidates who are part of the who are actually contesting the election. So here the code of conduct would be implemented by the Election Commission of India, and this code of conduct plays a very important role in ensuring free and fair elections. So this code of conduct would play a very important role. And similarly, the Election Commission of India would also perform the advisory role as well, because it advises the president, it also advises the governor on matters relating to the disqualification of members of parliament when it comes to holding office of profit. So in that cases, Election Commission of India advises president, it also advises the governor with respect to state legislative assembly, particularly about the disqualification of members of that particular house. And even it also performs certain quasi-judicial functions as well, because it acts as a court for settling disputes related to granting of recognition to political parties and allotment of election symbols to these political parties as well, right? So I hope you have understood the powers and functions of the Election Commission of India. Now, what are the key features that Election Commission of India is having? Through those key features, we could say that Election Commission of India is an independent body. It is having a certain degree of independence from the executive, right? So executive will not encroach into the roles, responsibilities, functions and powers of the Election Commission of India. So that is what is called as independence. So it is autonomous, and it also it can also independently take decisions regarding conducting elections in a free and fair manner. So firstly, so there is a security of tenure provided for the Chief Election Commissioner. The tenure of the Chief Election Commissioner would be 6 years or 65 years, whichever comes first, right? So therefore, the Chief Election Commissioner would be removed, right? So it is not easy to remove the Chief Election Commissioner, because the Chief Election Commissioner would be removed from his office on the same grounds as a judge of the Supreme Court. So therefore, it is a very lengthy and an elaborate procedure to remove any judge of the Supreme Court. It's not that easy, right? Because first a motion or resolution has to be signed by a certain member. For example, if it is introduced in Lok Sabha, at least 100 members need to sign a motion or a resolution, and if it is in Rajya Sabha, around 50 members need to sign it, and then it is up to the Speaker of the House whether to accept that particular resolution or reject it. And then if Speaker of the House accepts it, then he would constitute a committee. So all these things would happen, right? So it is a very lengthy procedure and it is not easy. So this indicates that the Election Commissioner of India Chief Election Commissioner of India has been provided with the security of tenure. And in fact, the other election commissioners cannot be removed from the office, because Election Commission of India consisting of Chief Election Commissioner and 2 other election commissioners. So therefore, the other 2 election commissioners should also be removed from the office except on the recommendation of the Chief Election Commissioner, right? So this also indicate that there is some sort of a security of tenure has been extended for the other election commissioners as well, along with the Chief Election Commissioner. And even the conditions of service. So conditions of service of Chief Election Commissioners cannot be varied to his disadvantage after his appointment. So for example, imagine that a Chief Election Commissioner has been appointed. So after his appointment, the government should not change the conditions of service, because though conditions of service may be disadvantageous for the Chief Election Commissioner and also the overall independence of the Election Commission, right? So this is also part of ensuring greater independence to the Election Commission of India. So here you could see some functions of the Election Commission of India. Now whenever you write an answer about the Election Commission of India, and if it is specifically asked you to write about the functions of the Election Commission of India, so you could mention all these different points. For example, Election Commission of India notify schedule for the elections, it implements code of conduct, and it also prepares electoral rolls or list of voters, and it also plays a very important role in delimitation of the constituencies, and it also declare election results. And in case of any disputes with respect to symbol within a political party or different political parties, it also settles those political parties, it registers the political parties, and it also recognize the national political parties or state political parties, it allocates symbols to the political parties, and it is entrusted with the responsibility of conducting free and fair elections in India. And also it advises the president with respect to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and it also advises the governor of the respective state legislative assembly about the disqualification of members. So you could actually write all these functions as functions of the Election Commission of India. So however, nowadays there are certain concerns specifically with respect to election commissioners. So we'll try to understand what are those concerns that we could actually see with respect to the election commissioners, right? Because it is being said that there is a lack of fixed tenure for the election commissioners. For Chief Election Commissioner, there is a fixed tenure, so fixed tenure of either 6 years or 65 years, so whichever comes earlier. So this is the tenure of the Chief Election Commissioner. But on the other hand, we also have 2 other election commissioners as well. So these election commissioners are appointed by the president, and their tenure would be decided by the president himself. Here there is a lack of fixed tenure for the other election commissioners. So therefore, the absence of a specified term may lead to concerns about the political interference and also instability. So there might be political interference when it comes to the appointment of the election commissioners, and there might be the instability as well. And in fact, there is also a potential for post-retirement benefits, because the election commissioners are being appointed by the government, right? So it actually, there is a huge role for the executive when it comes to the appointment of the election commissioners. So even after their retirement, they are not prohibited from taking government employment, right? So they are not prohibited from taking up, or they are having certain interests. For example, it is being said that retiring election commissioners are being appointed to the other government positions. So they are being appointed to the other government positions, and it raises certain concerns about the conflict of interest and also the impartial functioning of the election commissioners. And similarly, accountability and transparency. Right, so accountability and transparency is also another major issue. So concerns exist regarding transparency and accountability of the election commissioners decision making process. So if you have any examples regarding this, you could actually mention those examples, because that could further enrich your answer. Right, so conflict of interest is also another major concern. So when we talk about the conflict of interest, so there is a perceived political conflict of interest among election commissioners, so that can actually undermine the public trust in their neutrality. And similarly, no qualifications prescribed for the election commissioners. So there should be a qualification, and those persons should be appointed as election commissioners, and that ensures independence of the election commission, and that also enhances the efficiency of the election commission of India to conduct free and fair elections. Right, so therefore there should be expertise and there should be experience for these election commissioners to ensure that they conduct elections in a free and fair manner and without any bias. And similarly, inadequate enforcement of powers. Right, so discussions have been highlighting that there's a need for enhanced enforcement powers to effectively implement the directives and also tackle electoral malpractices. Right, so these are the some issues or concerns regarding the election commissioners. So what steps that must be taken to address the issues in the appointment? So here the second Administrative Reforms Commission has made some interesting suggestions, some interesting recommendations as well. So what are the suggestions it has provided? Establish a collegium, and this collegium should be headed by the Prime Minister, and it also comprising Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Leader of Opposition, Law Minister, and also Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha for transparent appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and also the other election commissioners. Right, so this collegium must be established to appoint the Chief Election Commissioner and also election commissioners. So therefore it would be immune from the Election Commission of India, would be immune from the high excessive influence of the executive, because remember that here Law Minister would be involved, Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha would be involved, Leader of Opposition would be involved, Speaker of Lok Sabha is also involved in this collegium system. So there is a high probability that executive influence on the appointment of these Chief Election Commissioners and also election commissioners would be substantially reduced by this collegium, and this is what the second Administrative Reforms Commission has recommended. And similarly, second Administrative Reforms Commission has also suggested to amend the constitution to provide constitutional protection to all three members of the election commissioners. So Chief Election Commissioners and other two election commissioners must be given the constitutional protection so that independence and independence of the Election Commission of India could be ensured. Right, so they would also have the security of their tenure, and they could also usually work without any fear or favor. And similarly, Supreme Court also made some important and interesting remarks with respect to Election Commission of India and also the reforms that are required within the Election Commission of India. For example, appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners based on the recommendations of the collegium, and equal protection to the Chief Election Commissioners and also election commissioners, and rule making power to the Election Commission like Supreme Court, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and also independent secretariat budget. So all these are the important suggestions and the recommendations that are being provided by the Supreme Court's Constitution bench to further strengthen the Election Commission of India and also enhance its efficiency to conduct free and fair elections. Right, so here Election Commission of India has been facing certain issues. Now, what are the issues it has been facing? So it is very important for us to understand what are the issues that Election Commission of India has been facing. So particularly, there are allegations that the Election Commission of India has been playing a partisan role. So that essentially means that ECI is more biased towards the ruling government, the ruling political party, or the executive. So that is one allegation. So that is leveled by the opposition political parties on the Election Commission of India. Right, so there are actions by the ECI, and those actions have been raising concerns over impartiality, such as giving clean chits for the model code of conduct and violations by the high profile individuals. Similarly, there's a lack of power with the Election Commission of India. So when I say there's a lack of power with respect to the Election Commission of India, so there's no doubt that Election Commission of India is having power to register political parties, but it is not having power to deregister the political parties. So that is also another major problem with the Election Commission of India. Right, so a lack of proactive use of authority, so this is also another major issue. Right, so a limited power to take action against the politicians seeking votes based on caste, religion, and it also hindering the effective enforcement as well. Right, so for example, in recent times we have seen the vote bank politics. So vote bank politics is one of the major problem that we could actually see here. Right, so 1 minute. Yeah, sorry. So in fact, there's a lack of proactive use of authority. So in recent times, so we have seen that there's an increased trend of vote bank politics, and even there are instances of violation of MCC, violation of model code of conduct. And in those instances, Election Commission of India is not very proactive, because if Election Commission of India is proactive, it can actually set a strong precedent. Right, so strong precedent, and then it would result in better implementation of the model code of conduct and preventing such vote bank politics, because it essentially means polarization of voters, polarization or mobilization of voters essentially on religion, on the lines of religion, on the lines of ethnicity, caste, etc. And that is not good for the democracy, and that is also not a better way of ensuring free and fair elections. Right, so it actually dilutes that principle of ensuring free and fair elections, and even it is also lacking control over the political parties. Particularly, we knew that most of the political parties in India lacking the inner party democracy. Right, so these political parties lack inner party democracy. However, the Election Commission of India is not having any power to ensure inner party democracy within these political parties, and also it is not having any powers with respect to regulating finances of these political parties. So this is also another major shortcoming. And similarly, politicization. So politicization in the sense that there's an absence of post-retirement employment restrictions for the election commissioners. and this also poses new challenges for the independent functioning of the Election Commission of India, right? So whenever there is there's no absence of post retirement employment restrictions on the election commissioners, so there is a high probability that they may perform their duties in such a manner so that would favor the ruling party, expecting the future benefits. So similarly, there's also a lack of transparency in the selection of the chief election commissioners and also election commissioners as well, and it is widely believed that the appointment selection of the chief election commissioners and other ECs are widely influenced by the ruling party. And also we knew that there are allegations on the electronic voting machines. So in order to in recent times, the opposition political parties have been leveling allegations on the Election Commission of India is that the EVMs are faulty and they are being hacked, right? So however, in recent times, Election Commission of India has introduced the voter verifiable paper audit trial to ensure that EVMs are working in a foolproof manner, right? So in fact, the opposition political parties have been telling that the EVMs are malfunctioned, they are being hacked and not registering the votes which are cast on these EVM machines. So all these things are actually eroding the public trust on the Election Commission of India's overall legitimacy and credibility in conducting free and fair elections. So this is also another major problem, and a very big problem when it comes to India's elections, Indian political system, is criminalization of politics, where criminals have been entering into the political sphere. So that is a major problem. So in fact, according to some data, more than 40% of the parliamentarians have criminal cases against them, right? So in fact, Supreme Court in several judgments have called for the fast track courts also, so that these cases can be tried as early as possible, right? So in this context, we can also see the inability on the part of the Election Commission of India to address the increased use of money and involvement of the criminal elements in politics also. So don't you think that these things could actually dilute the principle of conducting elections in a free and fair manner? Remember, the free and fair elections is also part of the basic structure of the Indian constitution, or basic structure doctrine that has been given by the Keshwanand Bharati judgment. So what should be the way forward in this context, right? So what should be the ultimate way forward? So enhance independence and impartiality of the Election Commission of India. So how can we ensure independence and impartiality of the Election Commission of India? So appointment process should be more and more transparent, right? So selection process, appointment process would be more transparent, and in fact, the Supreme Court and Second Administrative Reforms Commission have suggested there should be a collegium for the selection and for the recommendation of the names to the President for being appointed as Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners, right? So this selection process should be transparent, and also it is impartial. And also there is a need to strengthen powers of the Election Commission of India, particularly deregistering political parties, and powers to regulate the finances of the political parties, powers to ensure inner party democracy within the political parties. And also there is a need to provide statutory status to the model code of conduct, and there should be more powers to the Election Commission of India to strictly deal with the misuse or violation of the model code of conduct as well. So here, Election Commission need to act in a more proactive manner. So it should be more proactive when it comes to dealing with violations of the model code of conduct, deregistering political parties, regulations on finances of the political parties, and arresting the trend of criminals entering into the politics. And similarly, a proactive enforcement. So power of the Election Commission of India to take proactive action against caste and also religious based campaigning. and inner party democracy and financial regulation. So we have already discussed about this. There should be more powers given to the Election Commission of India. And similarly, the election commissioners are not there are no restrictions on the election commissioners appointment, right? So therefore there should be post retirement employment restrictions for the election commissioners. So for this there is a need to implement restrictions on post retirement employment to prevent conflict of interest. And transparency and accountability. For this there is a need to enhance transparency in the appointment process of the election commissioners. And EVM security and trust building. So improve EVM security measures, engage stakeholders to build public trust. Legal reforms also. Legal reforms in the sense that review and update electoral laws to address challenges and also simplify the existing procedures which are more complex, and also combat the criminalization of politics. So these are some steps that could be taken by the Election Commission of India to further strengthen, further ensure its independence, and also enhance its efficiency when it comes to conducting elections in a free and fair manner. Right. So now we'll understand some important aspects with respect to the State Election Commission as well. And this State Election Commission has been created by Article 243K of the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So remember that this 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act provided for the local self-governance institutions at the grassroots level. And this Constitutional Amendment Act has also provided for State Election Commission to conduct elections for the panchayats and also municipalities. And in fact, the State Election Commission ensures fair and transparent elections, and it also promotes democratic governance and also encourages citizen participation in local governance. And in fact, it has a 5-year tenure which is prescribed by the Constitution. So what are the issues which are being faced by the state election commissions? So it is also important for us to understand the issues that the state election commissions have been facing nowadays. So in state election commissions, very often we could actually see the political interference. The ruling parties very often interfere in the functioning of the state election commission, right? So therefore it leads to compromising the independence of the state election commissioners, because we very often see that ruling parties pressurize the state election commission to either delay the conducting of elections and also manipulate voter registration in their favor. And similarly, there are lack of resources. There's a lack of resources for the state election commission because inadequate funding, lack of staff, and also all these problems, lack of infrastructure. So all these problems actually hinder the effective management, particularly effective election management. And insufficient budget allocation also leads to shortage of polling booths and shortage of election officials, and that would further cause delays in also logistical challenges. So if state election commission has been facing all these challenges, so it would be impossible for the state election commission to conduct elections in a fair and transparent manner and also ensure grassroots level democracy. So there are also some security concerns in the sense that ensuring the safety of the voters, polling stations is very, very challenging, especially in volatile areas or sensitive areas where it will be difficult for the state election commissions to conduct elections. So similarly, inadequate voter awareness is also another major problem that the state election commissions have been facing, right? So they very often struggle to educate and also engage voters to increase voter turnout at the grassroots level, particularly among the marginalized communities, right? So apart from that, there's also lack of voter education campaigns. So election commission of state election commissions are not very proactive when it comes to organizing voter education campaigns. So when voters are not aware about voting, so it is obvious that it results in low voter turnout, and limited awareness of voting procedures as well among the people. And in states at the grassroots level, we also very often see irregularities in conducting elections, and there are also some malpractices which are being unearthed. For example, electoral fraud, manipulation of the electoral rolls, manipulation of voting. So all these things actually undermine the integrity of elections, because at the grassroots level we very often see cases like booth capturing, voter impersonation, tampering with ballot boxes, and also all these things are being reported in the local body elections. For example, this comes close to increased use of money and muscle power to win the elections, and this very often see at the grassroots level, right? So we can actually say that the state election commissions are lacking significant powers to conduct elections in a fair and transparent manner, and frequent political interference in the functioning of the state election commissions is also another major problem, right? So here independence of the state election commissions is being diluted. That is major problem. Similarly, the legal complexities, so complex laws and procedures, so they actually create confusion and hinder efficient implementation. For example, challenges in interpreting, applying electoral laws, so that leads to disputes and delays in the electoral process. So similarly, delayed dispute resolution, right? So delayed dispute resolution. So this is also another major problem that the state election commissions have been facing, because in courts there are backlogged cases and slow judicial processes. They also delay resolution of election disputes. So technological challenges such as adoption of, still they're lagging behind when it comes to adoption of new technologies, because that requires expertise, that requires resources, skilled manpower. So all these things have been posing challenges in the functioning of the state election commissions. Inadequate training, technical support, and also implementing electronic voting machines or EVMs, resulting in technical glitches and also skepticism among all the voters. So these are the major problems that the state election commissions have been facing. So what are the steps that are being required to address these issues? A set of measures need to be undertaken to address these issues. Firstly, independence of the state election commissions have been diluted, so therefore it is very important to ensure or safeguard the independence of the state election commissions, right? So for that particular purpose, they have to implement measures to protect the state election commissions from the frequent political interference from the ruling political parties. And there is also need to establish an autonomous body to oversee elections, and there is a need for allocation of sufficient financial resources or budgetary support for the state election commissions, so that they could invest in infrastructure, they could invest in staff, and they could also invest in improving their overall efficiency by bringing in new technologies or skilling manpower, new devices, new tools, etc. So therefore, for the better election management at the grassroots level, so the state election commissions must be empowered, right? So they must be given more and more budgetary support or more and more resources. So enhance security measures, so strengthening security arrangements with increased police presence, deployment of personnel at the sensitive polling stations by the respective state governments. If required, central forces can also be deployed to ensure free and fair elections in those sensitive areas, right? So in those sensitive areas, there's a need to implement strict security protocols. They should be surveillance systems. So all these things could actually prevent violence and also maintain a peaceful election environment. And strengthen anti-fraud measures, introduce stringent measures to prevent irregularities, electoral malpractices, including strict enforcement of laws and also proactive monitoring. Expedite dispute resolution, so establish fast track courts or dedicated election tribunals to expedite the resolution of the election related disputes, and setting up special courts with a specific focus on handling election disputes and also ensuring timely and effective resolution of issues that the election commissions at the state level have been facing, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our class, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.